The G1000 can make executing holds much easier than it was with the old VOR method by precisely guiding us along the entry and legs of the hold. When we practice instrument approaches, we often perform the full approach, including the missed approach, and hold as published. Here, we're practicing the ILS to runway 17 left at Colorado Springs. We'll fly it down to the decision altitude and then execute the missed approach. So at the DA, we'll click off the autopilot and initiate a climb. As we pass the runway threshold, the approach on the GPS goes into suspend mode, and we'll hit the susp soft key to activate the missed approach sequence. We'll switch the HSI over to the pink needles of the GPS by hitting the CDI soft key twice. We can now reactivate the autopilot and activate nav mode. The GPS will fly us on the published missed procedure, which is a straight-out climb to 7,200 feet, as indicated by the active waypoint, then a climbing left turn heading 020 to 9,000 feet, from where we'll intercept the 091 radial from Black Forest to Adane, the holding fix. Passing 7,200, the GPS will start to initiate that left turn. We can activate FLC mode to continue the climb. This procedure may be different if your aircraft has a toga switch for a go-around. We've bugged our top altitude at 9,000 feet, so upon arriving there, the autopilot goes into altitude capture mode. On the MFD, we could see the current leg in pink having us fly 020 until we intercept the radial to the hold, indicated in white. Arriving at that radial, the GPS turns us inbound to the hold. On the MFD, the hold entry is depicted with the white arrows. This shows that the GPS has selected a teardrop entry for this hold. We could override this and fly it parallel if we wanted to by using heading mode, but the GPS will do a fine job flying us into the hold as long as we actively monitor it. 1 mile prior to the hold fix, the Annunciation hold teardrop will appear. And then we'll be counted down to the turn, to 126 along those arrows on the MFD. Passing the holding fix Adane, the GPS will display a timer counting upwards. When it reaches 1 minute, we'll be turned left to the inbound heading, joining the hold. After the inbound turn, we can see our distance to the holding fix displayed, and after crossing, we'll be turned left to remain in the hold until otherwise instructed. So this is a basic hold after going missed on an instrument approach. Another common example of getting a hold instruction is prior to executing the approach. Here, we're setting up for the ILS 26 left at Pueblo when we get this instruction. Hold east of Jicta at 6,600 is published and expect further clearance at 1845 Zulu. This can happen if an aircraft that landed prior to us is disabled on the runway or at a pilot-controlled field hasn't yet canceled their IFR flight plan. ATC wants us on the hold in lieu of procedure turn depicted on the approach plate. Going on to the MFD and flight plan page, we see Jicta on the approach, but no hold is indicated after the fix. This is because when we loaded the approach, we said no to flying the course reversal, which makes sense. We were transitioning from the DME arc, and the approach plate indicates no procedure turns from here. Now that we need to hold at Jicta though, we'll need to manually build the hold. The G1000 makes this easy. We'll bring up the cursor by pushing the FMS knob. We'll hit menu and use the outer FMS knob to scroll to hold at waypoint and hit enter. Here we can build all the parameters of the hold. The default is to give us the inbound course matching our current track, which is pretty close to the 260 degrees depicted on the plate. So we'll only have to change this a little bit. We'll hit enter and then enter a few more times to accept that this is the inbound course, the legs are 1 minute, and the turn direction is to the right. All this can be configured based on what the hold requirement is. We can set and expect further clearance time, but we'll leave that for now, and hit enter again finally to load the hold. Now notice the racetrack pattern has been drawn in on the MFD moving map, with the arrows indicating direction of flight. Very important, notice that we're on the localizer guidance with the green needles on the HSI. If we want the autopilot to fly the hold, we'll have to switch to GPS mode by hitting the CDI soft key twice, and we'll hit nav to switch the autopilot to track the GPS mode. Note we've also got our heading bug matched to our current heading. The enunciation to hold direct comes up, and will be counted down to our first turn to 080, joining the hold just as we did in the first example. After completion of one loop in the hold, ATC instructs us that we're now cleared for the approach. We can unsuspend the approach by hitting the susp soft key, and because the final approach fix G1000 is the active waypoint, the HSI will automatically switch back to tracking the localizer. We can activate approach mode so the glide slope mode is armed just like on any other coupled ILS approach. Besides on an instrument approach, we may be held during the en route or arrival phases of a flight. Here we're flying northwest along Victor 366 towards the conal fix. Notice the hold pattern depicted there. ATC tells us to hold southeast of conal at 10,000 feet as published and expect further clearance at 1914 Zulu. So it's a very similar process to what we just did at Pueblo. We'll hit FPL to bring up the flight plan, hit the FMS knob to bring up the cursor, which is already highlighting conal. We'll hit menu, then scroll to hold at waypoint. The inbound course will be the radio we're flying away from the Hugo VOR behind us on the airway, 312, and everything else is correct, right turns, 1 minute legs. Let's also put our EFC time in 1914 Zulu. Notice hold has now been added as a waypoint after conal. We're instructed to hold direct, and we'll stay in the hold. Notice the time on the bottom right. We're about 5 minutes away from our EFC time, which was 1914 Zulu. As soon as we pass conal and the hold becomes active, notice the approach is suspended as shown above the susp soft key. We'll stay in the hold until the EFC. Just as we complete one full turn in the hold, we reach 1914 Zulu, and a message comes up at the bottom right which says the hold has expired. We can expect further clearance now, or if we lost comms, we could proceed to our next assignment in the clearance. We'll go ahead and unsuspend the hold by hitting the susp soft key. ATC will tell us to proceed on course along the airway, and once we cross conal again, the GPS will sequence us along our way to the next fix, Quail. Another great scenario where we may have to build our own hold is in the case of using an alternate hold. Here we're doing the ILS to runway 35 at Colorado Air and Spaceport. The MIST procedure has us climbing straight out and holding north of the field. Unfortunately, a strong buildup of weather is sitting north of the airport right on our holding procedure. Going MIST to this hold will be like jumping out of the frying pan into the fire. So we ask ATC if we can plan the alternate MIST approach, which is the Limex fix southeast of the field. ATC tells us something like, on execution of the MIST, maintain 7,500, turn right direct Limex, and hold as published. We can actually substitute this alternate into our flight plan. Over on the MFD, we'll pull up the flight plan, bring up the cursor by hitting the FMS knob, and scroll to that intercept waypoint. We want to insert a hold right after the MIST approach point in the sequence, which is why we've brought the cursor here. If we enter a new fix here, it'll be inserted between the MIST approach point, runway 35, and the intercept waypoint. So we'll start turning the FMS knobs to input Limex and hit enter to see it inserted where we want it. Now we can delete the original MIST procedure. The cursor is on intercept. We can hit CLR to remove that. The cursor then defaults to flat, the original hold fix. We'll hit CLR again and remove that, and it deletes the hold with it. So by now we've inserted the alternate hold fix and deleted the original MIST and hold. The final step is creating the new hold. This is familiar territory by now. We scroll to the new hold fix Limex, hit menu, scroll to hold at waypoint, make the course 093, which is the inbound, and we're good with right turns in 1 minute. So we've just substituted the alternate hold. And on the approach, when we reach the decision altitude and go MIST, when we engage the GPS guidance, it'll sequence us directly to the hold, just as we'd expect it to. Here's how the G1000 handles course reversals. We're back on the East Coast doing the VOR 5 at Salisbury. We're approaching the Salisbury VOR, the initial approach fix, from the north. we'll fly outbound and execute the course reversal. Here's what the sequence looks like over on the moving map of the MFD. Notice the waypoint named FF05. This is taken from the Jeppesen approach plate for this approach, and it's a derived fix showing where to begin a continuous descent on final approach, so we can use it as our final approach fix. Other than that though, there's no surprises here. The GPS sequences us through the course reversal as we'd expect it to. One caveat though, we don't see any VNAV guidance here because on a procedure turn or on a course reversal outbound, that VNAV profile won't be available. You might be able to use it on the inbound like you would for any other non-precision approach, but making the descent down to the procedure turn altitude won't be able to be done using the VNAV guidance. Here's one last function. Let's say we just want to park ourselves in a pocket of the sky for a bit. We can activate the hold at present position function by hitting the FPL key on the MFD bezel, scrolling to hold at present position, and hitting enter. The default will be to use our current track as the inbound course, but we can customize it the way we would any hold. After it's activated, we'll fly a 1-minute inbound leg, then be sequenced through the hold as normal.